Most people believe their lives will change when something outside of them changes. When they get more time, more money, more support, more confidence, or fewer problems. But life doesn't respond to hope. It responds to decisions. The turning point is never the moment circumstances improve. It's the moment you decide that no matter what the circumstances are, you will no longer live at the level you've been tolerating. That single internal shift is what separates people who transform their lives from people who stay stuck, explaining why they can't. A decision is not a preference. It's not something you try on to see how it feels. A real decision is made when there is no alternative left in your mind except moving forward. When you decide at that level, your brain begins to work differently. You stop asking yourself whether it's possible and start demanding answers on how to make it happen. You tap into resources, energy, creativity, courage that were always there but dormant. This is why people can change their lives in an instant. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because they become resolved. Once a decision is made, problems turn into puzzles, obstacles turn into feedback, and fear turns into a signal to grow rather than a reason to stop. What keeps most people from reaching that moment is indecision. Indecision feels harmless, but it quietly drains your life force. Every time you hesitate, every time you postpone, every time you say, "I'll think about it," you train your nervous system to accept uncertainty as a lifestyle. Indecision creates anxiety because the mind hates unfinished commitments. It keeps you stuck between who you are and who you know you could be, and that gap is where frustration lives. Indecision also lowers your standards without you realizing it. You start calling it patience, realism, or being responsible, when in truth it's fear disguised as logic. Over time, you begin to identify with staying stuck. You tell yourself stories about timing, age, background, or luck, and those stories slowly become your identity. Not because they're true, but because you've repeated them long enough to believe them. The truth is, most people don't lack potential. They lack decisiveness. They wait to feel confident before they act, not realizing confidence is built through action. They wait for clarity, not understanding that clarity comes after commitment, not before. Indecision steals momentum, and without momentum, even the strongest intentions collapse under the weight of doubt. The moment you decide, uncertainty loses its grip. You may not know every step, but you know your direction. That alone creates a surge of energy. Decisive people don't have fewer fears. They simply refuse to let fear make their choices. They understand that not deciding is still a decision, and usually the most expensive one. Every breakthrough begins the same way. A person reaches a point where the pain of staying the same outweighs the fear of change. In that moment, excuses lose their power. The past loses its authority, and the future becomes something you actively shape rather than passively wait for. Because once you decide, you stop negotiating with your limitations and start moving with intention, intensity, and absolute resolve. A true decision is not measured by the words you speak or the promises you make to yourself. It is measured by the depth of your commitment, the point at which hesitation disappears, and you refuse to give yourself an out. Most people mistake desire for decision. They say, "I want to change," or "I hope I can do better." But they never make the internal shift that removes all alternative paths. A real decision is the moment you say, "I will no longer accept anything less than what I know I am capable of." It is a declaration to yourself louder than any fear, stronger than any obstacle, and uncompromising in its demand for action. Without that level of commitment, all the strategies, advice, and knowledge in the world will only get you so far, because the energy that fuels real change is not in thinking, it is in deciding. Every result in your life today is a reflection of the decisions you have made consciously or unconsciously. From the relationships you maintain to the work you do, the health you experience to the habits you carry, none of it is random. People often blame circumstances, luck, or other people for their outcomes. But what they fail to recognize is that those external conditions only matter because of how they respond to them. A decision shapes behavior, and behavior creates results. If you examine your life closely, you will see patterns of choice that have reinforced either progress or stagnation. The strongest force driving success is not talent, resources, or even timing. It is the decisions that determine how you use those things. Most people underestimate the power of this truth because decisions are invisible. They are internal, subtle, and often dismissed as small or insignificant until the consequences manifest. A decision to speak up, a decision to show up, a decision to refuse mediocrity in one area of life can ripple across every other area. Conversely, a decision to remain passive, to settle for comfort, or to rationalize failure can quietly erode potential for years. This is why two people with the same opportunities and challenges often end up with completely different outcomes. One has mastered the art of decisive commitment while the other is trapped in a loop of hesitation and compromise. When you understand that every result begins with a decision, you stop looking outward for excuses and start taking ownership of your life. Ownership is liberating because it empowers you to recognize that no matter what has happened, you are not a victim of circumstance. You are a creator of outcomes. The moment you accept this responsibility, you gain control over your destiny. It changes your mindset from reactive to proactive, from fearful to resourceful, and from frustrated to focused. Decision also shapes identity. Who you believe you are is reflected in the choices you make. If you make decisions aligned with courage, discipline, and integrity, those qualities become part of your identity. If you make decisions based on fear, avoidance, or short-term comfort, those traits define you instead. This is why the most transformative decisions are not about money, success, or external recognition. They are about who you are becoming. Your results are simply evidence of that identity being expressed in the world. Every breakthrough in life is therefore preceded by clarity and commitment. Clarity without decision is meaningless, and decision without action is wasted. Real transformation occurs when you decide with such certainty that your body, mind, and spirit align behind you, compelling consistent action, demanding creativity, and attracting opportunities that were invisible before. Simply because you have stepped fully into the energy of choice, the quality of your decisions is the single greatest predictor of the quality of your life. Most people focus on what they do, the actions they take, or the circumstances they face, but every action springs from a decision. Your decisions act as a blueprint for your destiny, shaping the direction of your habits, your relationships, and ultimately your results. If your decisions are made at the level of fear, comfort, or avoidance, the outcomes in your life will reflect that. If your decisions are made from clarity, purpose, and personal standards, everything you touch begins to shift. The truth is, life does not reward intentions or good ideas. It rewards decisions and the alignment of your energy behind them. The most successful people in the world are not necessarily smarter, faster, or luckier. They are people who consistently make higher quality decisions, even when the choice is difficult, uncomfortable, or uncertain. Each decision is an opportunity to elevate your standards and to communicate to yourself and the world the level of life you are willing to accept. Change occurs when the pain of staying the same outweighs the fear of moving forward. Many people wait for external pressure to push them into action, not realizing that waiting itself is a decision to maintain mediocrity, indecision, and unfulfilled potential. Life does not pause while you deliberate. The clock is ticking. And every day spent avoiding hard decisions compounds the gap between where you are and where you could be. When you learn to recognize that the discomfort of growth is far more productive than the temporary comfort of staying stuck, you begin to act decisively. You begin to understand that results are not random. They are the logical consequence of the decisions you make today. People often underestimate how rapidly life can change when you make a committed decision. One choice, one moment of resolve, can set in motion a cascade of events that reshapes your relationships, your career, your health, and your sense of identity. The body and mind respond to commitment with heightened focus and energy. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly appear because your decision filters your attention to what aligns with your new path. Momentum is created, and momentum is unstoppable once aligned with clarity and purpose. Most failures are not caused by lack of talent, opportunity, or even resources. They are caused by hesitation and delay. Hesitation allows fear to multiply, doubt to fester, and old habits to reassert themselves. Indecision convinces the mind that waiting is safe, when in reality it is the deadliest form of resistance. Conversely, decisive action creates a feedback loop of confidence, energy, and further decision-making. The act of deciding produces momentum, and momentum produces results, and results reinforce identity. When you make a decision at the highest level, it immediately elevates your standards. Most people drift through life because they never consciously define what they will accept or refuse. They negotiate with themselves, lowering the bar to match their comfort zone, to avoid risk or to escape temporary pain. But the moment you decide that you will no longer settle for less than your potential, something remarkable happens. Your identity begins to shift, because identity is always a reflection of the standards you hold. When your standards rise, your behaviors automatically follow. You stop tolerating excuses and you stop rationalizing failure. Every action, every choice, and every interaction starts to align with the person you have decided to become. This is the invisible force that drives lasting transformation. It is not the environment, not luck, not talent. It is the inner decision that raises the minimum level of what you will accept. And in doing so, redefines the trajectory of your life. Once you understand the power of standards, you realize that consistent growth is not about doing more, but about aligning every action with higher expectations. People often wait for motivation to strike, thinking that inspiration will magically make them act. But motivation is fleeting. Standards, however, are permanent. When your standards dictate your actions, you act even when you don't feel like it, because consistency is no longer optional. It is a reflection of your identity. This is why one person can achieve in a week what others struggle to achieve in a year. It is not a matter of resources or timing. It is a matter of uncompromising commitment to elevated standards. When your why becomes strong enough, the how always appears. Many people fail to act because they are waiting for clarity, for a perfect plan, or for the world to be convenient. But real clarity emerges only after commitment. Once you decide that your outcome is non-negotiable, your mind begins to notice solutions, opportunities, and connections that were invisible before. You start to move with precision and purpose, because your decision aligns your subconscious, your emotions, and your energy toward creating the results you seek. This is why people who take decisive action in the face of uncertainty often succeed where others hesitate. They have chosen their destiny, and the universe responds to that level of certainty. Fear, pain, and discomfort do not disappear when you raise your standards, but their meaning changes. What once felt like an obstacle becomes a signal. Fear becomes a guide to growth. Discomfort becomes a cue for action, and failure becomes feedback. Decisions at this level rewire your perception of life. You begin to see that the world does not conspire against you. It mirrors the clarity and intensity of the choices you consistently make. By raising your standards, you create a new lens through which every challenge, every setback, and every opportunity is filtered. Consistency is born from identity, and identity is forged through decision. The more decisively you commit to higher standards, the more automatic your behaviors become. You stop negotiating with yourself because every action is measured against the baseline of what you have decided is acceptable. This alignment between decision, identity, and action produces results far beyond what effort alone can achieve. It is the secret that separates people who dream from people who live their dreams. And it begins with one simple truth. The moment you raise your standards, you begin to transform not just your results, but your entire life trajectory. Most people go through life underestimating the power of a single committed decision. They think change happens through luck, circumstance, or external validation, when in reality, transformation begins internally. The decisions you make shape your behaviors, your habits, and ultimately the results you experience in every area of life. The most overlooked truth is that two people can face the exact same situation, the same opportunities and the same challenges, and yet they will end up with completely different outcomes. Why? Because one person has mastered the art of decision, while the other allows hesitation, fear, and uncertainty to dictate their path. The difference is not in talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It is in the ability to decide with clarity, commitment, and unwavering focus. A single decision made at the level of identity rather than circumstance has the potential to completely rewrite the trajectory of your life. It is not enough to simply make a choice. The quality of that decision determines the quality of the life that follows. Most people make decisions from a place of temporary emotion, comfort, or avoidance, thinking that they are taking action. They negotiate with themselves, rationalize failure, or delay for the sake of safety. But these are not decisions, they are compromises. A true decision is uncompromising, unshakable, and irrevocable. It is a commitment that transcends doubt, discomfort, and fear. When you decide at this level, your mind and body align, your energy shifts, and your behavior naturally begins to reflect the magnitude of your choice. This is why so many people fail to achieve what they desire. They are waiting for motivation to arrive, for the perfect conditions to appear, or for circumstances to make the decision easier. Life does not wait for convenience, it waits for action. Fear is perhaps the most significant barrier to making transformative decisions, but the paradox is that fear is not an enemy, it is a compass. Fear shows you exactly where you need to grow, exactly where you need to act, and exactly where your potential lies. Most people interpret fear as a reason to retreat, to wait, or to avoid risk. Those who succeed learn to interpret fear differently. They understand that fear is a signal of growth, and that the moment you act in spite of fear, you expand your capacity, confidence, and resilience. Every breakthrough in history, every story of remarkable transformation can be traced back to a moment when someone chose action over fear. Fear does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes fuel, energy, and direction, not a cage that limits you. Decisions create momentum. Indecision destroys it. Every day that you delay, every time you rationalize inaction, you reinforce patterns that hold you back. Habits, routines, and the subconscious mind thrive on repetition. If you repeatedly fail to decide, you train your brain to tolerate mediocrity, to defer responsibility, and to accept compromise. Conversely, when you make a decisive choice and commit fully, the momentum that emerges is unstoppable. Small, consistent actions compound, doors open that you didn't see before, and your entire perception of what is possible begins to expand. It is the energy behind decision, not the decision itself, that propels transformation. Another essential element is associating pain with the cost of staying the same and pleasure with the benefits of change. Most people are trapped by short-term thinking. They seek immediate comfort, ignoring the long-term consequences of inaction. Growth, achievement, and fulfillment require confronting discomfort, embracing discipline, and taking responsibility for results. The moment you emotionally link the pain of staying the same with the reality of wasted potential, indecision loses its grip. When you emotionally link the pleasure, pride, and fulfillment of change with the decision to act, you activate a force inside yourself that cannot be denied. This is not intellectual reasoning. It is the emotional, physiological engine that drives human behavior. The most profound decisions are not about external outcomes. They are about who you are becoming. Deciding to improve your relationships, health, career, or finances is secondary to deciding the type of person you will be while pursuing those outcomes. Identity precedes results. If you decide to be a person who perseveres, who refuses excuses, who embraces responsibility, then your actions naturally align, and the results inevitably follow. Many people chase outcomes while neglecting identity. They hope for success without committing to the character, habits, and resilience required to achieve it. True transformation occurs when decisions are made at the level of who you are, not merely at the level of what you want action. Without strategy is random, and strategy without action is useless. But decision aligns both. A committed choice activates your focus, sharpens your strategies, and mobilizes your energy. Once a decision is made, your subconscious mind begins to work on your behalf. You start noticing opportunities, solutions, and connections that were invisible before. You attract mentors, resources, and ideas because clarity of decision filters attention and amplifies awareness. Momentum emerges naturally, and the results that once seemed distant or impossible become inevitable. Consistency is the product of aligned decisions. Once you decide who you will be and commit to that identity, actions become automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself because every choice is measured against the standard you have set. You stop tolerating behaviors, environments, and relationships that are misaligned with your goals. You start to measure every moment, every habit, and every interaction against the person you have chosen to become. This alignment between identity, decision, and action produces extraordinary results, far beyond what effort alone can achieve. Most people fail because they underestimate the compounding power of small, consistent actions that stem from one clear decision. Every choice, no matter how minor, either reinforces your vision or undermines it. Now, as we stand here together, take a moment and reflect on the truth we've uncovered today. Your life is the sum total of the decisions you have made, consciously or unconsciously, and the decisions you continue to make every single day. Every choice every hesitation, every commitment, or lack of commitment. And the most powerful realization is this: the next moment, the next decision has the potential to completely transform everything. The future is not written in stone, and it is not dictated by your circumstances, your past, or the limitations that you've been telling yourself about. It is dictated by the choices you make, starting right now, starting with the one decision that will define the trajectory of the rest of your life. Think about the moments in your life that you remember most vividly. They were not the moments of comfort, were they? They were not the days when everything was easy, when the path was clear, or when nothing was at stake. No, the moments that defined you, the moments that shaped your identity, were moments of decision. Moments when fear whispered in your ear, when doubt tried to paralyze you, when the easier path beckoned, and yet somehow you chose action, you chose courage. You chose to step into the fire rather than step back into safety. Those are the moments that sculpt a life of significance, a life of impact, and a life of fulfillment. The same principle applies to every single one of us right now. The only thing standing between where you are and the life you know you are capable of living is the decision to act. Most people make the mistake of waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect timing, waiting until the planets align or the universe finally agrees. But here's the hard truth. Perfect timing is a myth. Conditions will never be flawless, obstacles will never disappear, and fear will never vanish completely. The only way to move forward, the only way to seize life, is to decide with such clarity and commitment that the world has no choice but to respond to the energy of your decision. When you commit at that level, you no longer negotiate with yourself, you no longer allow excuses, doubts, or old stories to dictate your actions. You simply move, you simply do. And in that movement, the impossible starts to become inevitable. The next step, and perhaps the most critical one, is understanding the relationship between decision and identity. Decisions do not just create outcomes, they create who you are. Every decision you make is a statement about what you value, who you believe yourself to be, and what life you are willing to accept. If you make decisions based on fear, avoidance, or comfort, your identity shrinks. If you make decisions based on courage, purpose, and commitment, your identity expands. And when your identity expands, your potential expands, your potential expands. You start to see possibilities that were invisible before. You start to take actions that were unthinkable before. You start to create results that feel almost miraculous, not because luck intervened, but because your mind, body, and spirit are aligned behind a decision that refuses compromise. It is also critical to recognize that fear is not the enemy, it is a compass. Fear points you toward your greatest opportunities for growth, toward the areas where courage will have the greatest impact, toward the decisions that will most define your life. The moment you understand this, fear loses its paralyzing power. It becomes fuel. It becomes information. It becomes a signal that tells you where to move, how to expand, and what is waiting on the other side if only you step through the resistance. Every person who has ever achieved extraordinary success, who has ever created massive change in their life, has done so not in the absence of fear, but because they decided to act in spite of it. Fear will never disappear, but the energy of a committed decision transforms it from a barrier into a bridge. Decision also creates momentum in a way that no other force can. Momentum is the invisible force that compounds small actions into extraordinary results. The longer you wait, the more energy drains from your purpose, the more doubts accumulate, the more habits of mediocrity are reinforced. But when you decide, something incredible happens. Your energy shifts, your focus sharpens, and your actions begin to compound. Doors open that you never knew existed. Opportunities present themselves that you had not even imagined. People and resources are drawn to your certainty. The universe responds not to hesitation, not to wishful thinking, but to the clarity, intensity, and consistency of committed action. One decision, when followed by aligned action, creates a chain reaction that can change the course of your life forever. Consistency is the secret that separates those who dream from those who live their dreams. And consistency is born from decision. When you decide with clarity and commitment, your actions become automatic because they are no longer negotiable. You no longer ask yourself if you will take the step, if you will show up, or if you will follow through. You simply act because your identity demands it. You align your habits, your choices, and your daily behavior with the decision you have made. And over time, those small, consistent actions build up. Not gradually, but exponentially. The compounding effect of disciplined, committed action turns ordinary decisions into extraordinary results, small choices into a life of significance, and fleeting energy into lasting transformation. And yet, even with all this, the power of the single decision is most potent when it is tied to emotion, to meaning, and to purpose. Intellectual understanding alone will never move you. Motivation alone is fleeting. The reason people succeed is because they link the pain of staying the same to an emotional consequence that is intolerable. And they link the reward of change to an emotional outcome that is irresistible. When pain and pleasure are aligned with decision, inertia disappears, excuses evaporate, and the energy to act becomes unstoppable. It is not enough to know what to do. You must feel it in your body, in your heart, in your very being. That emotional charge is what propels you past doubt, past fear, and past every obstacle that stands in your way. Ultimately, the lesson is simple yet profound. You're always one decision away from changing your life. You can choose today to refuse mediocrity, refuse fear, refuse compromise, and refuse excuses. You can choose today to step fully into the person you are capable of becoming. Every choice from this point forward compounds the power of that decision. Every action, every habit, every relationship begins to realign with the life that decision dictates. The difference between where you are now and the extraordinary life that is waiting for you is not found in luck, circumstance, or waiting. It is found in deciding fully, completely, and without hesitation to step into your potential, to act with courage, and to refuse to settle for anything less than the life you were born to live. And so I leave you with this truth. The moment you decide, the world begins to shift around you. Opportunities appear, energy aligns, momentum builds, and your identity transforms. You no longer wait for life to happen. You create it. You no longer respond to circumstances. You shape them. You no longer let fear dictate your destiny. You harness it as fuel. The power to change everything, to finally live the life you know you're capable of, has always been within your hands. All it takes is one decision, one moment, one absolute unshakable choice to move forward with clarity, purpose, and commitment. Once that decision is made, the rest of your life becomes not just possible, but inevitable, because the energy of a committed decision cannot be denied. This is the secret. This is the principle that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary individuals. This is the force behind every achievement, every breakthrough, and every legacy ever created. And the beauty of it is that it is available to you in this moment. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect, but right now, right here. The question is simple. Will you decide? Will you step into the life you were meant to live? Will you refuse mediocrity, embrace responsibility, and commit to action with everything you've got? Because that one decision right now has the power to change everything, to rewrite your story, and to unleash a life of purpose, passion, and unstoppable momentum.